The sun was setting over the luxury beach resort, casting a golden glow on the sand. Guests were lounging by the pool, sipping cocktails and laughing. The gentle sound of the waves mixed with the soft music playing from the speakers. It was the perfect evening. One of those times when everything felt calm, peaceful, and perfect. But that peaceful evening was about to be shattered. Maya stood behind the bar, polishing glasses with quick, practiced movements. She was new here, but already she had learned to handle the wealthy guests with care. They were picky, sometimes rude, but they paid well. Maya had learned to smile through it all. She looked around at the guests, all chatting and enjoying their vacation. But then her eyes caught one woman. The guest was sitting alone at a table near the pool. She was well dressed, her expensive sunglasses resting on top of her head, her red lipstick perfect. Her name was Claire, and she had been a regular at the resort for years. Maya had noticed Claire before. She was known for being demanding. She always had something to complain about. But this time, something was different. Maya approached Claire's table with a friendly smile. "Good evening, Miss Claire. Can I get you anything else?" Claire didn't look up immediately. She was busy scrolling through her phone, tapping away furiously on the screen. Maya waited for a moment, then politely repeated, "Miss Claire." Claire finally looked up, her eyes cold, dismissive. She barely glanced at Maya. "Yes, I'll have another drink. And I want you to hurry up about it," she snapped, tossing her empty glass onto the table. Maya nodded, trying to keep her calm. "Of course, I'll bring that right out." She turned quickly, but just as she reached the bar, she heard a voice, sharp and angry. "I said hurry up." Maya froze. Claire's voice cut through the air, louder this time, filled with venom. Maya turned back, unsure of what was happening. Was she talking to her? Before Maya could even take a step, Claire stood up from her seat and stormed toward her. "You are too slow. This is the worst service I've ever had." Maya's heart raced. She had worked at the resort for weeks now, but never had a guest spoken to her like that. She tried to stay calm. "I'm sorry, Miss Claire. I'll get your drink right away." But Claire wasn't having it. "You think this is funny? I don't need to wait for anything. You're just some nobody." Maya's face flushed. She wanted to say something, but her boss had always told her to stay quiet and never argue with guests. She had to stay professional. Claire took another step forward, her face red with anger. And then, without warning, she slapped Maya across the face. The sound echoed through the bar. The crowd went silent. Maya's cheek stung, her skin burning. The shock hit her hard, like a punch to the gut. Her eyes widened as she stumbled back a step. Claire stood there, arms crossed, looking at her with a look of pure disgust. The guests around the pool, the staff behind the bar, all stood frozen. No one moved. No one spoke. Maya could feel her heartbeat pounding in her ears. Her hand went to her cheek, but the pain didn't register. All she could think was, did that really just happen? Claire didn't apologize. She didn't even seem sorry. Instead, she huffed. "Ugh, you people are all the same. Just worthless." Then she turned and walked back to her seat, as if nothing had happened. Maya stood there, speechless, her body shaking. The room felt smaller, the air thicker. Her breath came in shallow gasps. She wanted to leave, to run, but she didn't. Instead, she stood there for a few more moments, still trying to process what had just occurred. A few of the other staff members looked at her, but no one spoke up. Maya felt her stomach twist in a knot. This wasn't just about the slap. It was about how no one was saying anything. No one was coming to her defense. It was like what had happened wasn't even a big deal. Finally, the manager, Mr. Daniels, walked up to Maya. His expression was serious, but he didn't seem angry. He simply said, "Come with me, Maya." She nodded, trying to control her emotions. As she followed him into the back room, she could feel the eyes of the guests on her. They were watching, judging. Inside the small office, Mr. Daniels closed the door behind them. He sat down behind his desk, looking at Maya carefully. "Listen, Maya," he began in a low voice. "I know this isn't easy, but we can't make a scene with someone like her. Claire is a high-paying guest. She's been coming here for years. She's important to the resort." Maya's heart sank. She wanted to scream, to tell him how unfair that was, but she didn't. Instead, she kept her head down and whispered, "What am I supposed to do? Just let her slap me?" Mr. Daniels sighed. "I'll have a word with her, but I need you to understand. Sometimes we have to look the other way. This job, it's not always easy." Maya felt a cold chill run down her spine. She had hoped for support, for someone to stand up for her, but it wasn't coming. As she walked back to the staff area, Maya felt smaller than ever. It was like she didn't matter. Like her pain wasn't even worth acknowledging. But as she sat down in the break room, wiping the tears from her eyes, something inside her began to change. She had been silent for too long. Maybe it was time for her to speak up. The following day felt like a blur for Maya. She had barely slept the night before. The sting of Claire's slap still fresh on her cheek, and the weight of Mr. Daniels' words pressing on her chest. The resort was busy with vacationers, the noise of chatter and laughter filling the air. But Maya felt like she was in a different world. Everyone moved around her, but she remained still, trapped in her own thoughts. She forced herself to go through the motions, serving drinks, clearing tables, smiling for the guests, and pretending nothing was wrong. But the slap kept replaying in her mind, the look on Claire's face, the shock of the moment, the silence from the other staff. No one had come to her defense. No one cared. She could feel herself becoming invisible, like her pain didn't matter. It hurt more than the slap itself. As she passed by the bar, she spotted a man sitting alone at a table near the pool, his eyes focused on a book, but his mind clearly elsewhere. He was in his mid-30s, dressed casually but with an air of quiet confidence. His dark brown hair was a bit tousled from the wind, and his sharp blue eyes observed everything around him, as though he could see more than the world most people paid attention to. His name was Ethan, and today he would be the one to change everything for Maya. Maya had seen Ethan a few times at the resort. He never made a scene, never demanded special treatment. He was just different from the others. And today, something about him made Maya feel like he might actually be watching, noticing things that the others chose to ignore. As she walked by his table, she accidentally dropped a glass. The sound of it breaking snapped her out of her daze. She bent down quickly to pick up the shards, her hands shaking, her face flushed with embarrassment. "Are you all right?" Ethan's voice came from above her. She glanced up, surprised by the gentleness in his tone. His eyes were kind, not judgmental like so many of the guests. She nodded quickly, trying to hide the tears welling in her eyes. "I'm fine," she whispered, her voice barely audible. But Ethan didn't move. Instead, he placed his book on the table and crouched down to help her. "I didn't mean to make you feel uncomfortable. I saw what happened yesterday." Maya froze, her breath catching in her throat. She stared at him, her heart beating faster. "You saw?" Ethan nodded. "I saw the whole thing. The slap. Claire was out of line. No one should ever treat another person like that." Maya didn't know what to say. For a moment, all she could do was stare at him. It was the first time someone had acknowledged what had happened, the first time anyone had spoken the truth about what Claire had done. He reached for her hand gently. "I know you don't want to make a scene, but you don't deserve to be treated like that. No one does." Maya's throat tightened. She felt a lump form. The words stuck, unable to escape. "I don't know what to do," she admitted. "I'm scared. If I speak up, I could lose my job. The resort, they won't back me up." Ethan's expression softened. "You don't have to do it alone. I'm not just some random guest. I have the means to help. My family has investments here. I can make sure your voice is heard." Maya was stunned. She didn't know what to say. Could he really help her? Could anyone really help? Everything felt hopeless, like a storm she couldn't escape. But what if it gets worse? Maya asked, her voice barely a whisper. What if they fire me? What if no one believes me? Ethan looked her straight in the eye. I'll make sure that doesn't happen. You don't deserve to be silenced, Maya. And you're not alone in this. There are people who care, and I'm one of them. For the first time since the slap, Maya felt a spark of hope. It was a tiny spark, but it was there. She nodded slowly, her heart beginning to beat with a little more confidence. The next few days were a whirlwind of phone calls and quiet meetings. Ethan had reached out to his contacts, gathering evidence and making sure that Maya's story wasn't going to be buried. The truth was spreading like wildfire, and Maya found herself finally starting to believe that justice might be possible. But not everyone at the resort was supportive. Whispers began to spread, and some of the staff started acting differently around her. Some were kind, offering quiet words of support, but others looked at her with doubt in their eyes. The manager, Mr. Daniels, called Maya into his office once again. His expression was tight, like he was struggling to decide whether to be angry or apologetic. I know what's going on, he said, his voice low. This is getting out of hand. You don't know what you're doing. The media's involved now. The last thing we need is another scandal. Maya stood there, feeling the weight of his words. She wasn't sure what to say, but she felt something stir inside of her, a sense of defiance, of strength she hadn't realized she had. I'm not going to let this go, Mr. Daniels, she said quietly. I can't. Not after what happened. His gaze hardened. You're playing a dangerous game, Maya. You could lose everything. Maybe I've already lost everything, she whispered, the weight of his words sinking in. But I'm not going to stay quiet anymore. Mr. Daniels stared at her for a long moment before sighing. You're making a big mistake, he muttered before dismissing her. As Maya walked out of his office, she felt the pressure building in her chest, but she also felt something else, empowerment. She wasn't just a victim anymore. She had a voice, and she was going to use it. Later that evening, Maya received a message from Ethan. The text read, We're moving forward. It's time for Claire to answer for what she did. Maya's heart was racing as she sat in her small apartment that evening. She couldn't believe it. After days of feeling invisible, a small glimmer of hope had appeared. Ethan wasn't just a random guest, and he wasn't just offering kind words. He was actually helping her. She clutched her phone tightly, the words of his last text echoing in her mind. We're moving forward. It's time for Claire to answer for what she did. But just as quickly as that spark of hope had ignited, doubt crept in. What if Ethan was just a rich guy playing games? What if he couldn't really help? And what if she was just making everything worse for herself? Her phone buzzed again. It was a message from Ethan, this time with an attachment. Maya clicked it open and saw a list of names and dates. It was a history of incidents involving other staff members at the resort who had been mistreated or wronged. The dates were spread out over years, but the pattern was the same: mistreated employees, quiet payouts, and threats. Maya's stomach twisted. She had heard rumors, but seeing this list in front of her made it all real. It wasn't just Claire. The entire resort had a history of mistreating employees, covering it up, and silencing anyone who dared speak out. The wealthy guests got away with anything, and the staff had no power to stop them. Her mind raced as she scrolled through the files. Ethan had done his research, and he had more than just a few names. He had proof. Reports of workers being fired for things they didn't do. Accusations of harassment, bribery, and corruption, all hidden under the glossy surface of the resort's luxury image. There was one particular file that stood out. A case of a young woman who had been fired for speaking out about a rich guest who had groped her. The report said the resort had paid her off and forced her to sign a non-disclosure agreement. The name of the guest wasn't listed, but Maya recognized the pattern. The guest had probably been someone important, someone with money, and the resort had protected them. She sat back in her chair, her mind spinning. How many others had been silenced? How many people had been hurt just like her, but they didn't have someone like Ethan to help them? A loud knock on her door snapped her back to reality. Maya jumped, her heart racing. She quickly stood up and opened the door to find Ethan standing there, a serious look on his face. "Maya," he said quietly, stepping inside. "We need to talk." She closed the door behind him and gestured for him to sit. "What's going on? What's all this?" she asked, holding up the list of names and files. Ethan sat down, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her feel like he was seeing right through her. "This is the real problem, Maya. It's not just Claire. It's everything. The whole system here is built on silence and fear. The resort uses its wealth and power to control everything." Maya's chest tightened. "So, it's all rigged. All of it. Everyone's just disposable." Ethan nodded slowly. "Exactly. You're not the first, and you won't be the last unless something changes. The guests are protected. The staff are expendable." Maya looked down at the papers in her hands, her mind struggling to keep up. "But why are you helping me? You don't even know me." Ethan hesitated before answering. "Because I hate seeing things like this happen. I've seen it before, at other places, and I promised myself I'd do something about it when I could." Maya sat down, staring at the floor. "I don't know if I can do this. What if I lose everything? What if they fire me?" Ethan's voice was soft but firm. "You have to stand up for yourself. You can't let them win. I'm here to make sure you're not alone in this, and I'm not going to stop until everyone knows what they've done." Maya nodded, her mind a whirlpool of emotions. The fear, the anger, the doubt, all of it collided inside her. But beneath it all, there was something else. Determination. She wasn't going to let them silence her. Not anymore. The next few days passed in a blur. Maya couldn't concentrate on anything except the files Ethan had sent her. She thought about the other employees, the ones who had been fired or forced to stay quiet. What had happened to them? Where were they now? Were they still afraid? Or had they been forced to move on, pretending like nothing ever happened? Maya wasn't going to be like that. She wasn't going to let fear control her. She was going to make sure this story was heard, no matter what. One afternoon, Ethan called her. His voice was urgent. "Maya, we need to move fast. I've got a contact who's willing to talk to the press. But we have to be careful. If this gets out in the wrong way, they'll shut it down before it even starts." Maya's heart raced. This was it, the moment she'd been waiting for. She agreed to meet Ethan at a small cafe outside of town. When she arrived, Ethan was already there, his phone on the table, a serious look on his face. "I've arranged everything," Ethan said, looking up as Maya sat down. "The contact will meet us tomorrow. They have all the evidence. It's time to take this public." Maya nodded, trying to steady her nerves. The thought of speaking out scared her, but it also filled her with something else. Power. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for everyone who had ever been wronged by the resort, by the system that had let this kind of treatment happen. Ethan's phone buzzed. He glanced down at the message and looked back up at Maya. "It's time. Are you ready?" Maya hesitated for just a moment, but the resolve in her heart was stronger than ever. She wasn't going to let them get away with this. Not anymore. "I'm ready," she said, her voice steady. "Let's do it." The next morning, the weight of what was about to happen pressed down on Maya. She couldn't stop thinking about the choices she'd made. The world outside her small apartment seemed distant, as if it were just a background blur to her thoughts. Today wasn't just another day. Today, everything could change. She stood in front of the mirror, staring at her reflection. Her eyes were tired, but they held a quiet strength. It wasn't the usual fear she saw in herself. It was something new, something fierce. She wasn't just a server at a resort anymore. She wasn't just a victim. She was a fighter now. Maya grabbed her bag and headed out the door, her phone buzzing in her pocket. It was Ethan. Her hands shook as she answered. Maya, it's time. Meet me at the cafe in 20 minutes. The urgency in his voice made her heart race even faster. There was no going back now. When Maya arrived at the cafe, Ethan was already there, sitting at a corner table, his phone in front of him. He didn't look up when she sat down across from him, his eyes focused on something on his screen. What's going on? She asked, her voice low, her anxiety rising. Ethan didn't respond immediately. Instead, he slid his phone toward her. On the screen was a photo, a picture of Claire, the woman who had slapped her. But this wasn't just any picture. It was a shot of Claire standing at a high-end restaurant with a man Maya recognized. It was Mr. Daniels, the resort manager. Maya blinked. What? What is this? It's what we needed, Ethan replied, his voice calm but serious. You weren't the first one Claire treated like this, and you won't be the last, unless we do something about it. Maya stared at the picture again, her breath catching in her throat. Are you saying they know each other? Ethan nodded. Not just that. This picture is the key. Claire's been involved in a lot more than just slapping staff members. She's been a part of a system where high-paying guests and managers protect each other. It's not just about money. It's about power. And they use that power to control everything, including the resort's employees. Maya's chest tightened as the pieces began to fall into place. She remembered Mr. Daniels' words from the previous day. The way he had seemed more worried about the resort's image than her well-being. Could it be that he was involved in this? Before Maya could ask more, Ethan's phone buzzed. He quickly checked it, then stood up abruptly. It's time. Our contact is here. Maya followed him out of the cafe, feeling her pulse quicken with each step. They drove in silence, the city's noise muffled by the anxiety in her chest. It was happening. This was the moment that could make or break everything. They arrived at a small, nondescript building on the edge of town, far from the resort's sparkling lights. Inside, the air was thick with tension. The contact, a woman named Sarah, was waiting for them in the back of the building. She looked ordinary, almost unremarkable, but there was something about the way she held herself. Confident, poised, that gave Maya a sense of calm. Sarah, Ethan said, shaking her hand. This is Maya. She's the one who's been wronged. Sarah smiled, but her eyes were serious. I know the story. I've been tracking the resort for months. What happened to you isn't an isolated incident, but we have to be careful. This can't get out before we're ready. Maya nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. I understand. Sarah led them to a back room, where a stack of papers sat neatly on a table. It wasn't just one story, one piece of evidence. It was a collection. A detailed record of abuse, mistreatment, and cover-ups spanning years. Maya's heart dropped as she read through the files. She recognized so many names of people who had worked at the resort before her, their careers destroyed or silenced, their stories buried in the name of protecting the rich and powerful guests. Maya, these are the people who never got the chance to fight, Sarah said, her voice low but filled with urgency. You have the power now. This isn't just about you. It's about all of them. The ones who couldn't speak because they were afraid. Maya took a deep breath, her hands trembling as she flipped through the papers. She could feel the weight of the lives behind each story, each name. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for everyone who had ever been mistreated. And the more she read, the angrier she became. But then, a voice interrupted her thoughts. It was Ethan, his tone suddenly sharp. There's something else. Claire's been tipped off. She knows we're coming for her. Maya's heart sank. No one had prepared her for that. Are you sure? She asked, her voice wavering. Ethan nodded grimly. I just got a message from one of my sources at the resort. Claire's already taken action. She's called in favors. We have to move faster than we thought. Maya's mind raced. What did that mean for her? Could they really stop Claire and the others before they had a chance to cover everything up? She wasn't sure, But there was no turning back now. Suddenly, Sarah spoke up. Maya, it's going to get worse before it gets better. They're going to try to discredit you. They'll make up lies about you. They'll try to ruin your reputation. You have to be ready for that. Maya swallowed, feeling the weight of Sarah's words sink in. She had already been through so much. Could she really handle more? But as she looked at the papers in front of her, at the stories of others who had never been given the chance to fight, she knew she couldn't stop now. She wasn't just standing up for herself anymore. She was standing up for everyone. The moment had arrived. The battle was just beginning, and Maya was no longer afraid. The days following their meeting with Sarah felt like a whirlwind. Maya had always believed that once the truth was out, everything would fall into place. But the reality was much darker than she had imagined. The storm they had unleashed wasn't just about Claire or Mr. Daniels anymore. It was about a system built on lies, corruption, and a chain of wealthy individuals protecting each other at any cost. The first sign that things were starting to unravel came unexpectedly. Maya was at the resort, clearing tables near the pool, when she noticed the managers having an urgent conversation in the distance. Their words were too muffled for her to hear clearly, but the way they were moving, the intensity of their gestures, told her that something was off. Her heart skipped a beat. Had they found out? Had they discovered the evidence? She quickly turned away, trying to act normal, but every fiber of her being was on edge. She couldn't shake the feeling that her every move was being watched. That day, the usual luxury of the resort felt suffocating, like the walls were closing in on her. Later that evening, she received a message from Ethan. It was short but to the point. They're moving faster than we thought. We need to meet. Maya's mind raced as she hurriedly got off work. She knew it wasn't safe to stay too long at the resort. Everything was about to explode. But she couldn't just run. Not when so many others had been hurt by the same people she was fighting against. When Maya arrived at the small cafe where she and Ethan had met before, she found him already seated, his eyes scanning the room nervously. He looked up as she approached, his face serious. Maya, it's worse than we thought. Claire's trying to turn the tide. She's already talking to the media, making up stories about you. Maya froze, her stomach dropping. What kind of stories? Ethan's voice was filled with frustration. She's telling them that you're exaggerating, that you're making false accusations. And worse, she's trying to paint you as someone who's just out for money. She's already bribed some reporters. Maya clenched her fists. The familiar rage from the day of the slap returned in full force. They were trying to turn the narrative against her, to twist the truth into something it was not. I knew they'd do this, Maya said quietly, her voice shaking. I knew they'd make it look like I'm the problem. Ethan nodded, his face hard. They have the power to make people believe whatever they want. But you have something they don't, the truth. And we have more than just your word. We have evidence. Maya's heart raced. Are you sure it's enough? Are we ready? Ethan took a deep breath, his eyes meeting hers. We're ready, but this is going to be a war. It's going to get ugly. The resort has too much influence. Maya felt the weight of his words. She had already been through so much, and now the real battle was about to begin. She didn't know if she was strong enough to face what was coming, but she knew one thing for sure. She couldn't back down now. Let's do it, she said, her voice firm. I'm ready. The next few days were a blur of late-night meetings and phone calls. Ethan had arranged everything. The media, the lawyers, and even private investigators. He was using his connections to expose the corruption, to shine a light on everything the resort had hidden. But Maya knew they were walking a dangerous line. Every step they took seemed to bring them closer to a confrontation, one they might not be able to walk away from. Then came the breaking point. Maya was walking through the resort one afternoon, heading to the staff room when she saw Claire talking to Mr. Daniels, standing at the edge of the pool. Claire's voice was low but unmistakable as she pointed toward Maya. She's the one causing all this trouble. Claire's voice rang out. I told you, if we don't shut her down now, everything will fall apart. Mr. Daniels's face was unreadable, but Maya could see the tension in his shoulders. He said something, then turned away, his eyes scanning the area. The look on his face made Maya's blood run cold. They knew she was the threat now. As Maya ducked into the staff room, her phone buzzed again. It was Ethan. We need to move. The story's breaking soon. I just heard Claire's people are going after you. Be careful. Maya's hands shook as she read the message. It wasn't just the media they had to worry about anymore. The resort was making its move. They were preparing to fight back. And Maya was about to be caught in the middle. That night, she lay awake in her apartment, the weight of what was happening pressing heavily on her chest. The battle was no longer about just speaking the truth. It was about survival. They were going to try and tear her apart, to make sure she never stood up again. But as the darkness of the room closed in around her, she made a silent promise to herself. She wasn't going to let them win. The next morning, Maya arrived at the resort early. Her heart raced as she walked through the staff entrance. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched, that every movement was being tracked. As she walked past the manager's office, she noticed a few unfamiliar faces in the lobby. There were whispers among the staff. People were talking about her, and not in the way they had before. Maya knew the storm was coming. She could feel it in her bones. The fight had begun. Later that day, the media storm hit. Maya stared at her phone, the notifications and messages flooding in faster than she could read. The media had exploded with the story, each new headline more twisted than the last. The resort's PR team was doing its best to discredit her. The accusations were relentless, but they were all lies, carefully crafted to destroy her credibility. Maya sat in the corner of her apartment, her knees pulled to her chest, staring at the screen. The world was against her now. The most shocking part was that some of the people she thought she could trust had turned their backs on her. Her coworkers, who had once whispered in support of her, now avoided eye contact, walking past her as if she didn't exist. It was as if the resort's power was more contagious than she realized. No one wanted to be caught up in the storm. But even as the storm raged outside, Maya felt something else building inside her: determination. They could try to tear her down, but they couldn't take her voice. She wouldn't let them. It was time to stop being afraid. Ethan had warned her that the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but even he hadn't prepared her for the full force of what she was about to face. The story had spread, and now it wasn't just about a slap. The media, the guests, and the corporate forces behind the resort were all aligned to shut her down, but Maya was done being silent. She had to fight back, and she had to do it soon. That night, Ethan met her at a quiet cafe on the edge of town. His face was tired, but his eyes were sharp. There was no hesitation in his voice when he spoke. Maya, we need to go public with the full story. The media's already taken their shot, and now we have to take ours. Maya nodded, her mind already racing through the possibilities. What's the plan? We have one chance, Ethan said, his voice low. Tomorrow morning, I'm bringing you to meet with the press. I've arranged everything. We're going to expose it all. Claire, the resort, the corruption, the cover-ups. This is your chance to set the record straight. Maya swallowed hard, her hands gripping the coffee cup tightly. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about everyone who had ever been silenced or pushed aside by the powerful. She had to do this. There was no turning back now. Are you sure? Maya asked. Will they listen? Ethan's voice was firm. They have to. This is bigger than just you. This is about changing the way things work, not just at the resort, but everywhere. People need to know the truth. The next day, Maya stood before the press, her hands trembling slightly. The cameras were flashing, the reporters crowding around her, their questions coming fast and sharp. Maya, what do you say to the allegations that you fabricated everything? One reporter shouted. How do you respond to accusations that you were fired for poor performance? Another asked. Maya's throat tightened, but she stood tall. She had prepared for this moment. She had the truth, and now it was time to share it. I am here today because I am tired of being silenced, Maya began, her voice steady, though every word felt like it was being ripped from her chest. The resort has a long history of covering up abuse, mistreatment, and exploitation of its employees. What happened to me, the slap, the way I was treated, is just one example of a much larger problem. And it's not just me. There are others. There are so many others who have been hurt, but no one has ever stood up to say anything. She paused for a moment, letting her words sink in. The room was silent, every reporter listening, hanging on to her every word. The truth is, Claire isn't the only one responsible for the way I was treated. Mr. Daniels and the entire system at the resort are complicit. They cover up the abuse, they protect the wealthy guests, and they push employees like me to the breaking point. But I'm not going to let them get away with it anymore. Not when I know what they've done. Not when I know how many lives they've ruined. Maya's heart raced, but she kept going, her voice growing stronger. I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm asking for justice. I'm asking for everyone who's ever been hurt by this system to have a voice. As she spoke, she saw the reporters shifting, scribbling down notes. For the first time, she felt like she was being heard. But the storm was far from over. As soon as Maya finished speaking, she was bombarded with more questions. Some reporters were sympathetic, others were skeptical, and a few tried to twist her words. But no matter what they asked, Maya held her ground. She couldn't let them derail her. She couldn't let them turn the story back on her. After the press conference, Maya walked out into the waiting car, her head held high. The weight of the world had been lifted from her shoulders, but she knew this was only the beginning. The press would try to tear her down, the resort would fight back, and Claire would stop at nothing to protect her reputation. But Maya was ready. That night, Maya sat in her apartment, scrolling through her phone, reading the articles. There were mixed reactions. Some supported her, others labeled her a troublemaker. But what really struck her were the messages from the people she worked with at the resort. Some were sympathetic. They thanked her for speaking up, for having the courage to stand against the system. But others, they called her a liar, a fraud, and worse. The messages stung, but they didn't stop her. She knew what she was doing was right. And as she read through the comments, she saw a few familiar names. Former employees, workers who had been fired or forced to leave the resort. And in their words, she saw a flicker of hope. Maya wasn't just speaking for herself. She was speaking for them. She was speaking for everyone who had ever been silenced by the powerful. Her phone buzzed again. It was a text from Ethan. They're fighting back. Claire's going to try to discredit you more, but the media is starting to take notice. This is bigger than we thought. We can win this, Maya. Just hang in there. Maya smiled softly, feeling the strength of his words. She wasn't alone in this fight. The battle was far from over. But Maya was ready to see it through. The days after Maya's press conference were a blur. The media coverage exploded, and the world seemed to be watching her every move. The resort had started firing back, releasing its own statements, and sending out its legal teams to try and shut down the growing movement. But the more they fought, the stronger Maya's resolve became. She was no longer just an employee at the resort. She was a symbol of resistance. The attacks against her continued to come, and Claire, the wealthy guest who had slapped Maya, was the face of the resort's defense. She played the victim in front of every camera, crying foul and claiming that Maya had fabricated the entire story to ruin her life. Her every move was calculated, but Maya wasn't fooled. The truth was on her side, and she had no intention of letting it go. Yet, despite the growing public support for Maya's cause, there was a part of her that couldn't shake the fear of retaliation, the fear of what might happen next. Her name was plastered all over the news, but so was the resort's image, and the people in power wouldn't let her tear it down easily. The stakes were higher now than ever before. Then came the call. It was from Ethan, his voice tense with urgency. Maya, they're moving against you. They're pushing everything to the limit. You need to get out of there. Now. Maya's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? What's going on? They've already started talking to your family, Ethan replied. They're using your past to try and discredit you. They're threatening your father. You need to leave. Get somewhere safe. Her breath caught in her throat. The thought of her father being dragged into this was a blow she hadn't anticipated. The people at the resort knew exactly how to play dirty, and it was clear they were willing to do anything to break her. But Maya wasn't going to run. I'm not going anywhere, she said, her voice resolute. I'm not going to hide. Not when it's this far along. Listen to me, Ethan's voice cracked with frustration. They're pulling strings. They've got people watching you, watching your family. We can't let them have the upper hand. Maya paused, looking out the window of her apartment, the view of the city feeling like a distant, cold reality. Her father had always been her protector. He was strong, steady. The thought of him being dragged into this fight made her stomach churn. But if she ran now, if she backed down, it would all be for nothing. No, Ethan, Maya said firmly. This is my fight. It's about more than just me now. I'm going to end this. That afternoon, as the sun began to set, Maya made her decision. She wasn't going to cower, and she wasn't going to let Claire or the resort's wealthy backers win. She had come too far, and she wasn't alone anymore. She had the people, the workers, the former employees, the ones who had been silenced for too long. They were behind her now, and together, they were going to expose the truth. She went to the one place she knew she could get the support she needed, the media center. Maya and Ethan arrived at the small building where the truth was about to be revealed to the world. As they entered, they were met by Sarah, the woman who had helped them get this far. She was calm but determined, her expression steely as she looked over at Maya. You're sure about this? Sarah asked, her voice low. Maya nodded. I'm sure. It's now or never. Ethan, standing by Maya's side, added, we have everything we need. The story of the cover-ups, the corruption, the way they've manipulated the media. It's all documented. They can't hide it anymore. Sarah smiled slightly, but there was no warmth in it. We're going to make sure they can't twist the narrative anymore. It's time to take the fight straight to them. They were ready. The press conference that followed was unlike anything Maya had ever experienced. The cameras were all trained on her, and the tension in the room was palpable. Reporters fired questions, some in disbelief, others sympathetic, but Maya stood tall, her voice unwavering. She was no longer just a woman telling her story. She was a warrior. We've uncovered the truth, Maya began, her voice carrying across the room. The resort is built on a foundation of exploitation, manipulation, and lies. But it's not just about the wealthy guests like Claire. It's about the system they've created, a system that protects the powerful and punishes the vulnerable. The room fell into a stunned silence. She had just crossed the line. There was no turning back. Maya continued, we've gathered evidence from former employees, from staff members who were afraid to speak out. The truth is there. The resort has been lying to the public for years. And now, it's time for them to face the consequences. The press took it all in. Some reporters looked shocked, others skeptical, but none of them could ignore the power in Maya's words. The truth was undeniable. But just as Maya was about to finish, the doors to the press room suddenly slammed open. The security guards stepped in, their eyes scanning the room. At the front of the crowd stood Claire, flanked by Mr. Daniels. Their faces were hard, their expressions cold. Claire stepped forward, a sneer on her lips. You think you can bring down everything I've worked for? You think you can destroy my reputation with lies? Maya's heart pounded, but she didn't flinch. She had known this confrontation was coming. She knew Claire would try to intimidate her, to make her feel small. But Maya wasn't afraid anymore. "You're not the one who controls the truth, Claire," Maya said, her voice strong and clear. "And you're not the one who gets to decide who wins. You may have money, you may have power, but you don't have the truth. And that's something you can't buy." The tension in the room was thick, as if the air itself was charged with electricity. The press was watching. The world was watching, and for the first time in her life, Maya felt like she truly had the upper hand. Claire's face twisted in rage. "You'll regret this," she hissed, but Maya didn't flinch. She stood her ground, knowing that whatever happened next, she had already won. The battle wasn't over, not yet. But in that moment, as Maya faced Claire and Mr. Daniels, as she stood before the media with the truth in her hands, she knew that this was the turning point. She had started a fire that couldn't be extinguished. And no matter how hard they tried to put it out, the truth was out.